only see potential in people, but you go a step further and you start to intentionally and consciously invest in excavating the potential that you're seeing in the people around you. In a sense, you start to develop those people by helping them to see value in themselves as you add value to them. Good people, welcome again to Oscar Amisi Leadership Podcast, where we drop a video every week on matters leadership. We are so passionate about leadership. We equip you with high capacity tools to drive societal transformation as a leader. Walk alongside you in your leadership journey. We've been talking about envisioning for the last couple of weeks, and today we want to engage a higher gear. Once you've learned the art of envisioning, you've come up with a vision, you've learned how to communicate it to the people and the teams around you, how do you then get them to take it to the next level? And that's what starts to inform our podcast starting this week. Empowerment. For that vision to be taken to the next level, you've got to empower the people around you. Empowerment is so critical to any leader if people are supposed to take that vision, on it, and take it to the next level. What is empowerment? What's the definition of empowerment? I define empowerment as simply this, that empowering others is simply the act of enabling them to make decisions and to take action. To empower simply means to give power or authority. And the image I like using here is that image of a parent, that when you have a child and you are taking care of this child, by the time they grow up, what you're doing is that you're empowering to become teenagers, then adults, then be able to chart their own path, be able to take and perpetuate the family legacy as they chart their own path. You don't educate them, you don't expose them for them just to be around your space. You prepare them for what is ahead of them so they can chart that path for themselves. So what is that? That is a parent empowering a child. The same thing happens to leaders, that you have people around you, you sell vision to them, you envision them, they get to understand it clearly, but if you just stop at that, they will never do anything about it. You've got to get to a point where you now start to empower them to take that which you've communicated to them to the next level. And that's what we want to talk about. How do we empower? Because we need to, a great leader empowers those around them. In fact, I say empowering leaders is the health of any effective leadership. If you're a leader and you're not empowering the teams around you, then your team is unhealthy. Your health will be determined by the extent to which you go to empower the people that are around you. Are you raising leaders or are you just raising followers? The difference will be seen by how much you go out to empower them. Effective leaders know if you just cast vision, communicate it properly, and you don't give people the authority and the power to be able to take it to the next level, the people you're raising are just followers. But if you are going to raise leaders to be a great leader maker, then you've got to give authority, give power to the people so that they may be able to take your vision, not just own it, but take it to the next level. In a leadership sense, in empowering, you've learned to train, to equip, and then to believe in those that are around you. An empowering leader has learned that they have to take time to train those that are around them, equip them with the tools for them to be effective, and then believe in them to be able to execute what they've been trained in. And I want to share with you key principles that guide any empowering leader. 3 key principles that should guide an empowering leader. When you look at this thing, you'll be able to know whether I'm an empowering leader, I'm a person who's raising other leaders, or I'm just raising followers around me. These 3 key principles are so important in the art of empowering people around you. Number 1, an empowering leader must have the principle of discernment. An empowering leader must have the principle of discernment. What do I mean by having a principle of discernment? In other words, is that you are able to see great potential in the people before that potential becomes obvious. You're able to see great potential in those around you before it becomes obvious. A discernment is about seeing treasure in people where others can't even see it. I normally say that any effective leader must be a scout. That all you need to do every time is to find out the people around me, what skills, what potential do they have? What giftings do they have? What promise am I seeing? You know, you're becoming like a football, a talent scout. Then you'll be able to empower people. You need that. You need to be a discerning leader. That you can take that which is rough and transform it to be a finished product. You can't do that unless you have your eyes open to be able to look at the people around you and be able to tell, I see potential in this person. It may still be rough, it may still not have been worked on, but I can take that potential and work on it and make this person to be one of the greatest leaders ever. An empowering leader, one, must have the principle of discernment. Number two, an empowering leader must have the second principle that I call the principle of development. The principle of development. The first one is discernment. The second one is development. You see, at this point, you not only see potential in people, but you consciously and intentionally start to invest in excavating that potential. I'm going to say it again. At this point, where you now get into a stage of development, you not only see potential in people, but you go a step further and you start to intentionally and consciously invest in excavating the potential that you're seeing in the people around you. In a sense, you start to develop those people by helping them to see value in themselves as you add value to them. You help them to see value in themselves as you start to add value to them. It's called the principle of development. That principle of development means you've got to be very intentional. You'll be like, I can see potential in person X. I can see potential in person Y. This is what I need to do to make sure that I start developing and investing in that potential. You see, you start to have a high commitment to people development. Your work is not just to look at what are they churning out, but how do I move this person from point A to point B to point C? How do I make this person better? They are good in this area. How can I help them sharpen that area so they can be the best version of themselves? It's called people development, the principle of development. You start to have a high trust in the growth of the people. You create opportunities for them. You expose them. In a sense, you take them to trainings. You create platforms for them to be able to thrive. You'll be able to expose them to your networks because you're like, I've seen potential in this person, and I need to make sure that I invest in it so that they can be the best version of themselves. So remember, great leader makers must empower. And how do you know you're empowering? What are the must-haves if you're going to be an empowering leader? One is the principle of discernment. Number two is the principle of development. The third one is what I call the principle of deployment. And they all start with letter D for it to be easier for you to remember. Discernment, development, and the third one is deployment. And in deployment, you are able to find a strategic avenue to help the potential to find expression. At this point, you are able to find strategic avenues that will expose your people so that you can make sure that their potential finds expression. You don't want to have gifted and talented leaders who are not able to execute or to do that which they've been endowed with. I mean, you think, I don't know what sport you like, but whatever sport you like, you don't want to be that person who's very good in the training sessions, in the training camps, but you never get an opportunity on the pitch to play. Every player, every sports person looks for an opportunity to be able to showcase their talents and their giftings. And the same thing happens with leaders. You've designed them, you've picked them out, you've scouted them out, you've developed them, but you don't stop at that stage. You say, I'll go a step further and deploy them. Create a platform for them to be able to find expression, for them to be able to showcase the potential that they have. That's what a great leader does. You create opportunities. you're able to get to a place where you use your influence and placement to help these people go higher in their self-actualization. They start to believe in themselves. Why? Because you created a space for them and deployed the giftings and the talents that they have. Will they at some point get it wrong? Yes, they will do. But you see, you become a great leader by making sure that you know when to correct somebody, that you know that failure is not fatal, that they can make mistakes, they can fail at some point, but it's your work to call them back forth and say, how do we interrogate the lessons that we are learning from the failures that we have? So don't be a leader who says, I may deploy them, they may mess up, they may make some mistakes. Every leader, any great leader at one point, at one time or another, made mistakes. But how do you come out of it? Is when you call them back and say, let's interrogate the lessons we are learning. I've deployed you, but what lessons are we learning from the mistakes we made and from the failures that we had? That's what great leaders do. Great leaders must empower. And you don't empower just by what you say, but it has to be backed by action. Design, develop, then deploy. And something else that you may need for you to be able to deploy properly is that you must develop a high trust in the people that you're leading. You must have a high trust. You must create a high trust environment. In fact, that's the best description of that act. You must develop a high trust environment where people can come in and they know, you know what, I can be myself here. I can do what I've been taught. I can do what I've learned without the fear of thinking that I'll make mistakes and be shown the door the next day. I know I'm in an environment whereby my mistakes will be corrected, where I will be sharpened to become the best version of myself. Thank you so much for listening to me today. But I need you to understand those 3 things that we've learned today, that listen, as an empowering leader, you need the principle of discernment, you need to be a scout, you need the principle of development, you need to be somebody who's able to build people, train people, equip people, and then you need the principle of deployment, where you now consciously and intentionally invest in the excavation of the talents and the potential that you're seeing around the people around you, the leaders that you're developing in your leadership journey. Thank you so much. Please, if you like this teaching, I would kindly ask you to subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Spotify, and all the other. We are on all the major podcast platforms. Please go ahead and subscribe and share. Let us know where you're watching us or listening us from. If you have any question, just put it in the chat. We'll be able to pick out some of those questions and answer in the next podcast. And as usual, I always say, if you want to listen to what I'm teaching in greater detail, go to Amazon. Go to Amazon and get my new book, Seed It Out, How Great Leaders Become Great Leader Makers. Because that's the work of a leader. That book will help you. That book will equip you to be the best leader that has ever been. We'll see you again next week as we continue to unwrap this conversation on empowering, why it is important for every effective leader to be an empowering leader. See you next week when we meet again.